And welcome to the Unknown Webcast. This is just a bit of a trigger warning for those who believe words are more injurious than sticks and stones. I really am so conservative, I can't turn left even when I'm driving.
That's true.
In addition to giving trigger warnings to our viewers, Ron Hensel and I both drink coffee for your protection, and a lot of it as well.
Yes.
This week, Steve Lagoon joins us to consider born again and again and again
Again.
the problems of reincarnation. My name is Don Vino. I'm president of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in Wonder Lake, Illinois, which produces the Unknown Webcast. And our senior researcher is Ron Hensel, who will introduce the sponsors of today's webcast. And here is Ronnie Baby.
Ronnie Baby. Greetings from sunny Florida, where the palm tree came out, saw its shadow, but
It's about to come out if I can find it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, you got to find it. Saw its shadow, and now we have 12 more months of summer. Our sponsor for this edition of the Unknown Webcast is Current Karma Planning Agency. Start living your next life now with Current Karma Planning Agency. Our regular legal disclaimer, our guest on today's webcast, insert name here, that would be Steve Lagoon, has no connection whatsoever to any of the satirical content of the Unknown Webcast. Hereafter referred to as the webcast, although we probably will not mention it again. The satirical content includes any and all commercials and credits, puns, smart remarks, or anything else that might fall under the definition of satire. In the meantime, Midwest Christian Outreach Inc. bears no liability for or responsibility for anyone's opinions regarding this satirical content. Notice, the opinions expressed on this webcast are ours and should be yours too. If you enjoy it or if it annoys you and you just want to inflict it on someone else to ensure your continued access, please go to MidwestOutreach.org, click the yellow donate button, and contribute as you feel led. And as you do, never fear. This webcast is Y2K compliant. And don't forget to subscribe to us on your favorite video channels. And now, our very, very special guest, Steve Lagoon. Take a bow, Steve.
Hello.
No, it's hard to make small space. Greetings.
Can I clarify? Can I clarify the legal disclaimer? Does that mean that I cannot be witty or interesting?
No, just you can't complain when we are.
Right. Well, yeah. and we take no responsibility for any wits that you may inject.
Yeah.
Nor do we assume that you have a sense of humor. And if you get offended by our sense of humor, our response is too bad.
As it should be.
Have we gotten any complaints lately on satire?
No, not so far. The only thing we had, which is why we created a little disclaimer, was Marsha Montenegro who would go, right. I have nothing to do with that. I don't. And we had one, his name escapes me right now, but one of our contacts is a professor, and he doesn't really like satire, but he was on our program and he decided he really likes satire after all. So that's kind of funny.
We converted him.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's hard. Dr. Wade, H. Wayne House really loves to be on here because he likes our stuff. So I do want to mention one other thing, because Steve Lagoon is another one of the culprits who will be at the 2025 Engage conference in Palatine, Illinois, which is next week, actually the 15th and 16th of August. So, Steve, why should anyone out there that's tuned in or will be tuned in the next few days to look things over consider coming to the 2025 conference?
Why should they attend?
Yeah.
I think it is an awesome experience if you are interested in the Word of God and defending the faith. You get to interact and hang out with some of the brightest minds that deal with Christian apologetics and alternative religions, people that devote their time and energy to studying these things out in depth. So you're not going to just get kind of superficial, kind of general knowledge. You're going to get really specific knowledge from people who know what they're talking about. Because one of the worst things I don't like is, and you could see that the author, it's just very general, very popular, but not very specific, not very helpful. I love going to the M&R conferences and interacting with these great teachers that know their stuff and can really help you to deal with whatever the group or the philosophy or theism that you're dealing with. So it's well worth your time and energy to get there to that conference.
Yeah, good. So if you're interested, go to emnr.org/conference. All the information is there, the details, and workshops and plenary sessions and who's going to be there. So that'll be a week from Friday. So that'll be good. All right. So I was mentioning before we started, I'm enamored with various aspects of Eastern thought because to me it doesn't sound rational. So I recall as uh, a younger version of myself, I'll say, when the Beatles had their "I Am a Walrus" song, and I thought, and I wasn't a Christian, but I thought that's just weird.
I loved it. First time I heard it, I was totally captivated.
Yeah, well, sitting on a cornflake waiting for the band to come, I thought that's just weird. And then later, Marianne Williamson, in her book Return to Love, talks about having breakfast one morning and realized that this was God pouring God onto God and was about to consume God because she's a panentheist. Everything is God. Now, not everyone who believes in karma is a pantheist, but many of them are. So, what is the problem with reincarnation? I mean, you get to go around in life again and again and again, after all.
Just to address what you said about the Beatles, I have to confess I'm a big Beatles fan, and we could mention Across the Universe and other songs also by the Beatles. They did make waves, and they did introduce the Eastern ideas of Hinduism and reincarnation. George Harrison probably went to his grave still espousing those things. So it's unfortunate, but they had a big influence on our culture, moving them toward Eastern ideas, unfortunately. But the idea, I think the biggest objection to reincarnational thought, whether it's Eastern or where we get Western ideas or Christian ideas trying to mix in with Eastern ideas of reincarnation, I think they all fail because the Bible is a message of grace. The Bible is a message of the atonement of Christ as the way to salvation. And reincarnation is essentially a self-help method of salvation. It's like you have to earn it. You're going to keep coming back. And most Hindus don't think of it as a positive thing, like maybe some Westerners do. Like, hey, I just get to go back to second grade and start over. Most Hindus don't look at it that way. They look at it as the wheel of rebirth that you want to escape from, because you have to keep working and working. And the word that comes to my mind is when at the Jerusalem Council in AD 50 in Acts 15, where I think it was James or Peter, well, probably James, said, do we want to put this yoke upon him, the yoke of the law? And that's one lifetime. How much more having that? It's like I forget the famous story of the guy that had to keep rolling the wheel or the rock up the hill, and then it falls down, and it was just an endless thing. That's what reincarnation is. It doesn't appeal to me. What appeals to me is the idea that, hey, even though I could never in one lifetime or 50 lifetimes ever escape the wheel of rebirth, ever earn my way to heaven. But Christ did it all once and for all. He died for our sins once and for all. He's the Son of God. His price was fully sufficient. So that's the gospel. That's the good news, that Christ took my sins and bore them on the cross and redeemed us who put our faith in him. So we receive his righteousness. He takes 2 Corinthians 5:21, the great exchange, that Christ took our sins and gives us his righteousness. So that message of the gospel, the good news of Christianity, is in complete contrast to the message of reincarnation and karma, where the person has to earn and work until he works off all his negative karma.
Yeah. So now we were talking before we went on that there's 8 or 10 different types of karma, kind of afoot out there in culture. So
Afoot.
um,
Karma
yeah,
afoot.
karma afoot. It's making its way around, and there's modifications to each one of them. One of them that I am pretty aware of is what I might call a Western modification of reincarnation, where you basically stay human in all of your reincarnations. You don't go up and down. For example, like uh, in some of the
Where you come a rock or an animal or
yeah, right.
transmigration.
I was trying to think of a particular one that doesn't eat meat, for example, because the cow might be grandma on her way back up in a reincarnational channel, right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, but so in the Western view, you are, in this life, you are who you are. You're Steve Lagoon, who has to go back to second grade, you think. But perhaps in a previous existence, you were the king of Siam or somebody very important. So we have a lot of that. Is that typically what reincarnation, those in Western culture, think of it as?
I think those in the Western or Christian, those who trying to combine the two, they try to yeah, they rule out that it could be animal to human uh, transmigration. They try to soften, I think, the tone of it. So for the Hindu, as I said before, it's not really a pleasant thing. You're trapped in this wheel of rebirth. You keep coming back, and their goal is to escape it and reach nirvana. But for the Westerners, it's like some of the ones that I've read anyway. They try to sound like, oh, this is actually a good thing. We keep to get coming back over and over again and learn the lessons, and eventually we'll get good enough, and then some of the Western ones also try to retain the idea that you retain your individual self into eternity, where I think most Hindu ideas are that you lose your selfhood into when you merge with the Brahman, with the great oneness.
Yeah,
And so there are definitely differences.
right. So I had a conversation some years ago with a Buddhist woman, actually. This is the first time I was at the Parliament of the World's Religions in 1993. And my friend Stephen Z has struck up a conversation with her and then called me over and said, you need to talk to her because I think she's a little confused on things. And so we started talking about karma. Uh, and I posed this question. I said, is rape wrong? And she said, oh, it is terribly wrong. I said, okay, but if I understand your view of karma and reincarnation, isn't it the case that a rapist may be doing the woman that's being raped a service by helping her work off her bad karma from previous life by being raped? In other words, isn't he doing her a good deed to rape her and help her work off her karma in order to be born into a better situation the next year? And she stopped for a few minutes and she paused and then she turned and walked away because she didn't have an answer for that.
He didn't slap you.
No.
I tell you what, there's several things that strike me about that, but you're right. It could be that in the view of that woman, that in a previous lifetime, the woman that was being raped might have been a man who was raping a woman in that previous life. So this is karma's payback.
Right.
That she's now a woman. So and that has to be paid, right? This is what karma has determined, that she's going to go through that terrible ordeal. She has to. And if you try to save her, are you then just merely prolonging, putting off this negative experience she has to go through? And so to me, that shows the twisted nature
So
and logic.
do any of these people who believe in this agonize over that very question? Maybe I shouldn't help that person because they might be working off bad karma.
It's exactly one of the biggest problems when the missionaries and Westerners started going to India. The missionaries would see somebody suffering in a gutter somewhere, and we got to do something. We got to help them, and they would be told no. I mean, they're paying for their negative karma, and if you go and help them, you're actually hurting them because you're merely prolonging or putting off, postponing the lesson that they need to learn.
So how do Hindus practice medicine then?
Well, I think this is the Western influence, because before the Westerners were there, it's the Westerners that were building the hospitals, the Christians that were building the mission organizations and the orphanages, because before that influence, that kind of compassionate care really wasn't there. But I want to say something else about the Buddhist view of reincarnation. You were talking to a Buddhist, and this is really interesting because one of the biggest criticisms of the Buddhist form of philosophy is, whereas Hinduism has the jiva, atman, or the soul, we could call it the soul, the individual that survives from, allegedly survives from life to life to life. The Buddhist view is different. It's really, the self does not survive from life to life. So so this is the biggest criticism of Buddhist views of reincarnation, is if the self doesn't survive, how can the karma follow that self? It's a philosophical problem. Norman Geisler talks about it. Most of the critics that look at the Buddhist view of reincarnation see that it's really this gobbled view of the self, in which pieces of it go here, pieces of it go there. So it's really hard to say, how can you justify the idea that the self has survived in any real way?
Right.
And if that's the case, how can the karma follow? How could they learn?
Right. So it's really not even a logical faith.
That's a problem for the Buddhist view, right?
That's the Buddhist view. But the Hindus have also a problem as far as the memory. And that is one of the biggest criticisms of reincarnation and karma, is that most of us do not remember our previous lives.
We can't hardly remember the previous day.
Unless you're Shirley MacLaine is an outlier, is what you're saying, right?
I think so. I think she's an outlier. But, maybe I think the response to advocates of reincarnation is say, well, kids remember more. As time goes on, we forget it. But when we were kids, we remember that better. Or the big solution to that problem is past life regression, hypnotherapy. And we can go to a counselor, and he can take us back not only to our childhood in this life, but to past lives or even in between. Because a lot of reincarnationists believe that there's a gap between lives. Some believe that you are instantly, when you die, you instantly are reincarnated in someone else. Others believe that there's a gap that could be 50 years, 100 years, or whatever. And so you're learning in that period as well. So they don't always agree on anything, but the problem with memory is if I don't remember how am I supposed to learn? Like if I touch a hot stove as a kid, I will remember that and I won't touch the hot stove. But what if you you're being punished for something from a past life, you have no recollection of it? How does that make sense? And that's one of the big problems with reincarnation doctrine.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a problem.
So go ahead.
I thought Ron was going to say something.
No, I'm
okay.
Waiting.
Well, he did have a profound look on his face.
Yeah, I was looking at the comments.
Oh, okay.
They're very profound, but there's only 3, so I'm waiting for. Well, actually, there's only 2, but earlier when you were saying the goal is to get out of this cycle of
get off the wheel.
The wheel of reverse hamster.
I always assumed, or at least I came to assume, maybe somebody informed me, there was this George Harrison song, "Give me love, give me peace on earth, give me life, and get me free from birth." Was
yep, that's in it.
Free from birth. He wanted to be free from birth.
Yep.
And I think that eventually that was explained to me as a Hindu thing. And it's very similar to the attitude, not the doctrine, the attitude toward rebirth is similar to the Greek conception of how the body, how the whole material world is kind of like a prison. It's kind of like it's not even real ultimate reality. It's not a place you want to hang around. So that when Paul talked about the resurrection on Mars Hill, everybody kind of busted out laughing, because why would you want to be resurrected? For them, that meant coming back here, and that in a way was kind of like, maybe it sounded to them kind of like reincarnation, but whatever it sounded like, it meant the same thing as it did to these Hindus, which is you have to come back to this evil material world. To what extent does Hinduism or other reincarnation systems, to what extent do they look at the world the same way as these ancient Greeks did?
Well, Pythagoras is a well-known advocate of reincarnation, early Greek philosopher. Plato is often cited as supporting reincarnation. And yet, you're right, the Platonic worldview was that the world is evil. It's a bad place, and you are... Go ahead.
Well, that's become associated with the Gnostic worldview. I think, Plato, he had that illustration of the cave. For him, it's almost like this world wasn't even real. You weren't really experiencing the fullness of reality in this world. He compared it to like being in a cave, and there's a hole, or there's an entrance to the cave through which light shines, and people are faced away from that. They're seeing the projections, the shadows of the people outside the cave, and they don't really have any concept of what it's like to be outside. And perhaps when you die, you get to be like that. And anyways, this was in the Gnostic construction. Of course, you have the ultimate God, the ultimate entity, whatever he is, who can't even be bothered with this world. And in fact, his biggest mistake was having an emanation or kind of like a creature that was stupid enough to create the material world, the demiurge. Not a bright person, apparently. And so there's just this general negative pessimism about the material world. And so my question is, does Hinduism have a general negative pessimism about the material world?
Yes.
Okay, short answer.
So
Thank
that's the answer. No.
Yeah.
So
you.
yeah, with Platonism, Plato had the world of forms. The real world in the
The real
heavens
world.
was the forms up in heaven, and everything on earth was based upon it, a copy of it, but it wasn't the real thing.
It's the Matrix. We're in the Matrix. And you got
Yes.
to get out of the Matrix. Of course, in the movie The Matrix, the real world is kind of worse than the Matrix. But anyways, go ahead.
But the Hindu concept of Maya, or the Eastern idea of Maya, is illusion.
Right.
That the universe really is an illusion. Now, there are some forms of Hinduism that don't agree with that and think the world really is real, but most forms do believe in Maya, that the world is an illusion, which just blows me away because it's so inconsistent with the logical analysis. Like, if the world isn't there, and if I'm not really I'm not a real self other than Brahman, other than God, how could I sin? How can I, if I am Brahman, how can I be guilty of anything? And how did it ever? It's the same problem with Christian Science. They say, well, they deny the reality of evil. Okay, there's no evil. And so then you say, well, then why do we think there's evil? Well, that's a mistake. It's just a mistake of mortal mind. Well, but isn't mortal mind an illusion? It's an endless progression or retrogression with no explanation. And I think that the idea, if in Hinduism, Brahman is all that there really is, and everything is, pantheism, everything is Brahman, then are we saying that God is a sinner? I mean, how could I, if I am Brahman, sin? And why do I even have the illusion that the world is real and that I'm real? And why would karma punish me? Surely this principle of the universe would know that I'm not really a self, and it would know that the universe is not really real, and the experiences that we think we are having are not real. So why then does this perfect law of karma punish us for it? So it's all very irrational, illogical.
Do they have a concept of sinning in your heart, so to speak, or anything that corresponds to that?
But you still have to be a self.
So they don't really believe the self is a reality, is what you're saying.
Well, they do have the Jivatman, the soul, but what I'm saying is that it's an inconsistent belief.
Right.
How can you say on one hand that everything is God, and on the other hand, say I have my own individual self and soul? So some Hindus realize that problem and advocate for the self, but many do not. Many believe that the whole thing is Maya, illusion.
Well, the way Woody Allen handled this dilemma was to say, well, what if nothing is real and everything is really an illusion? And he said, well, in that case, I definitely overpaid for my carpet.
Yeah.
I mean, what it's like, what is, I mean, what happens when you experience pain in these? I mean, I know you're probably working off karma, but what is the pain? Does it exist? What are you feeling? I mean, it's in Christian Science, the pain is an illusion. Is it an illusion in Hinduism too?
I don't know. I assume that they believe that it feels real, and that some forms of Hinduism say that Maya itself is created by God. So if God is projecting out the idea of this delusion or illusion, first off, why does he hold me accountable for it then, for believing what he is making us believe, Maya, this illusion that the universe is real, that I am real, doesn't that make God guilty of evil himself? If it's not all true, but he's causing us to believe it.
Well, except that they don't really hold to something called evil as we understand it. Is this karma, but how do you decide what's good and bad in a karmic world? Because there is
Yeah,
really no good or evil. So
that's a good point. If Brahman is an impersonal, like a lot of Hindus believe, by the way, the gods that they believe in, Vishnu and so forth, those are believed to be merely manifestations or projections of the impersonal God, Brahman. So I think that's quite a philosophical trick, that an impersonal force can create personal gods, so that the effect is greater than the cause. But it looks like we got something going here.
well,
Huh.
we're gonna have, but we do have to hear from our sponsor because they have a great offer for those who are
Well,
interested in this idea.
and it's exciting. It's exciting to learn about the past lives you've lived in exotic lands and cultures, isn't it? It sure is. But as fun as it is to share previous incarnations with family, friends, and random strangers on airplanes, what have you done to prepare for your next life in, the future? What have you done to plan for your next reincarnation? If your answer is nothing, we have 4 words for you: Current Karma Planning Agency. Their comprehensive future incarnation planning services include destination planet and species options, social rank options, personal appearance options, IQ options, sense of humor options, and so much more. Why risk coming back like this, or like this, or even like this? Start living your best life now with the Current Karma Planning Agency. It's about time someone offered that service. And another service would be to get our screen back. How do we do that, Don?
Well, I do it
Oh,
like that.
okay.
See, for you, it was just an illusion that it was still black. I knew the truth.
You saw it all before I did.
The ultimate reality.
The
Yeah.
ultimate reality, and I'm not even Brahmin. Um, in 1999, all this stuff is, again, it's fascinating to me why people believe certain things. But there's a publication at that time, I don't know if they're still around, called the Beltrain Papers. It's really a periodical for those involved in Wicca.
Hmm.
And it was a question about abortion. This individual was kind of struggling with being pregnant. Should she have an abortion? Should she keep the child? She didn't really know what to do. And then it occurred to her that she needed to communicate with the infant in her womb. And so, as she did, she discovered, to her surprise, that it was her late mother who had decided to pop in for a visit. And
I'm sorry to laugh. I mean,
yeah, well,
people take it
and
seriously.
and no, she didn't want to be reborn again. She just wanted to be close to her daughter for a while, just to visit. So
Oh,
she would
yeah.
prefer that they carry out the abortion.
Okay. Have her skull crushed and
Yeah,
forced to reborn.
exactly.
Yeah. I can see
So
why she'd prefer that if she'd already knew her daughter.
right,
So,
s right. So there's a myriad of ways that individuals work this out to seem to make sense to them. Uh, Another question is a question of morality. I think this is kind of an interesting one as well. Frank Beckwith developed this line of reasoning, and that is the question of morality. And there are those who would say, well, morals differ from culture to culture. And he argues that that actually isn't true. Just the way that we carry it out varies from culture to culture. And then the example he uses is, in America, we like our beef. You know, McDonald's, 100 quadrillion sold or whatever. Uh, we have myriad steakhouses and lots of ways to get beef. Whereas the Jains, for example, in India, they wear gauze because they don't want to inhale a bug, and they sweep as they walk so they don't step on a bug or something. And the reason they do that is follows the same reasoning that we have. We don't kill grandma. We don't eat grandma. For them, the bugs and things are grandma on the way back up the incarnational ladder. So in both cultures, it's wrong to eat grandma. So the moral question is, what do we do with our relatives? Uh, but our view of who the relatives are changes depending on your cultural background.
For me, I just don't want to inhale a bug or choke on one. I mean,
Well, I would like to know if you believe in reincarnation and you're concerned about acquiring negative karma. How do you know what you should do? Where do you find the moral law explained?
Right.
So, like over in India, it was perfectly fine to leave that person laying in the gutter because they're paying for their negative karma. That's their worldview, that's their belief. And we, as Westerners, as biblically based people, believe in compassionate caring for the suffering. And so that's two different philosophies, two different beliefs. How do I know which one is the correct one? And I believe we can make a strong case that uh, if there is a God, and we can make a strong case for that too, that He is love. God is love. And in comparing the two systems, one has compassionate caring for the needy and suffering, and it's always been that way. They build the hospitals, the orphanages, and the other doesn't. Which strikes you as being more in line with what God, if He exists, would want? And to me, the answer is clear: Christianity.
Okay. Now we have a question here. We'll post up here, and you guys can have a field day with trying to either answer it or shine it onto somebody else. Hi, Don, Ron, and Steve. People have had near death experiences and they have seen different beings, different Jesuses, and as and white tunnels. Uh, can we choose to go to God and not come back to Earth?
Well, I was a chaplain at a senior care center, and I've seen and heard some interesting things. But I think that most researchers that look into near-death experiences come away with explaining it as a combination of, and I'm not going to deny that people can have such experiences, but I think a lot of it can be explained away by the drugs that people are given for pain during their last moments of life. People are often on pretty heavy painkillers that can affect their thinking. The brain lacking in oxygen toward the end can also cause you to have some unusual visions and experiences like that. And nor would I discount the possibility of demonic activity if people in their lives have tried to make contact with spirit beings and spirit guides. I don't doubt that that's also possible, that some of that stuff is deceptive. People claim that they've gone to hell. People claim they've gone to heaven, written books, and later on find out that the person admitted that it was a fraud. Like Heaven is for Real, I think was called. That
Yeah,
later on
right,
it was shown
right,
that it was largely made up.
right.
And so we can't rule out fraud or the fact that people are just, maybe they had a very realistic dream that seemed so real, but it was a dream. But all of that said, I can't say with certainty that somebody couldn't have a near death experience. I had a woman tell me, and it was very plausible and real, that she told me she was mad at God. And I said, "Why are you mad at God?" Because I died and I was in heaven, and God told me that I cannot stay. I have to go back down because there's something more that He wants me to do. And can I absolutely prove that wasn't the case? typically, Hebrews 9:27, it is appointed to man once to die and then the
Right.
judgment.
Right.
But could it be that there's a place right on the edge between life and death in which people have a legitimate experience? I can't say no. What do you guys think?
Well, I think number one, to answer the question, is we have to admit that we don't have access to all of the information. We have what's called incorrigible truth. There's no way we can verify it. So we can't affirm that it's true, and we can't demonstrate that it is not true. We simply don't know. That's number
It's a
one.
subjective area.
Right. It's a subjective truth. Uh, so that's number one. Number two, we have two texts in Scripture that address this in different kind of ways. One is, as you pointed out, it's appointed unto man once to die, and then the judgment. Now, death is the separation of the spirit from the body. It's not some annihilationism. So the spirit goes somewhere. I would argue that currently it goes to be with God, waiting the resurrection, at which point the spirit and body will be reunited. The other is Paul writes this interesting thing that happened that he said, I knew a man who, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know, God knows, went to the third heaven, whether in the body or not of the body, only God knows, and he saw things that are unspeakable. So, is it possible to have an out of body experience to be with God? The answer is maybe. Certainly, it happened at least once. However, it isn't like the heavenly tourism that we see it today, where you go to heaven and you have water fights with Jesus in the river of life, and have a guided tour of these closets with extra body parts that people forgot to claim after they were amputees. So
First
the
I heard
Bible.
that.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting one.
But don't forget, Don, but then they come back and write a book about it too.
They come back and write a book about it.
Make a lot of money.
Yeah, so that one I would say is a complete fraud. I wouldn't say it's a perfect fraud because it's hard to reach perfection in this life, but it's a complete fraud.
Yeah.
So hopefully that gives you an answer. It's a partial answer. What we know is you don't take a trip to heaven and return just because you want to stay there. I would say if someone has an out of body experience where they're in heaven, and even Paul says, I'm not sure, was they out of the body or in the body? I don't really know. This is just what I know. Was it a vision? We don't know that even.
Well, one thing I know is that when people claim to have these NDE experiences and then they write books about it, some of the things they state are clearly unbiblical.
Right.
And that tells me that I should not trust their descriptions of what heaven is like or what hell was like. The only thing we can be sure about is what God has revealed to us in the Bible.
Right. And he doesn't reveal a lot about that.
That's true.
Right.
So, okay.
It does. I mean, the problem I have with these accounts is that it's like God tells you to go back, and then what did you do? Did you turn around and how did you get back? I mean, who got you back here? It kind of seems to assume that they had some level of control over what they could do, and that God expected them to use it according to His command. This is kind of, it's like, what? Where does this come from? Yeah.
Yeah, God is sovereign. He's in control.
I mean, if the story of the rich man and Lazarus is true, it doesn't seem that there was much control, especially on the part of the rich man. And the fact that Abraham didn't grant his request, I think, well, he said, there's this huge chasm. We can't go over to you. You can't come over to us. Now, what did he say about Well, he basically just answered they wouldn't believe if anybody returned from the dead. Uh, but I don't see anywhere in there where people, even on the good side of the divide, had the ability to return at will. And that's the other thing. How many of these stories resemble the story of the rich man and Lazarus? How many of them resemble that? How many of them include the details that Jesus gave?
Right.
You know, that there are two places, one of two places you can go. They seem to kind of conveniently omit that.
Yeah, and it's good you went to that because that poses another kind of an interesting question. Because here you have the rich man begging, not necessarily go back himself, but at least send Lazarus to warn my brothers. And Jesus' response was, "They have the law and the prophets. That's sufficient. They have what they need to know. We can't really provide them additional information by sending someone back from this side to warn them. They wouldn't believe," he says, "even if someone rises from the dead."
Yeah.
And it's just really unfortunate that a lot of people will go chasing after all these fad books that purport to have some new revelation about uh, the afterlife or whatever. And in accord with what you just said, we have the Bible. We have everything we need. The Bible is fully sufficient for us. So we don't need to chase after these fads.
Exactly.
Right. Well, I had, now this is only tangentially related, but it has to do with the question of the Bible. I had a conversation fairly lengthy with a Muslim on Friday morning. And as we're talking through various issues, um, and making a defense for the Trinity and the deity of Christ, I said, now, granted, all of this information comes out of the Bible, and Islam rejects the Bible as reliable for today. And he said, yes. I said, okay, so let's go through why I held that the Bible is reliable. Because his question was, well, why the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Quran, they seem to be in conflict. And so I pointed out the Bible, Old and New Testament, is not in conflict. That most of the Jews rejected the teachings doesn't mean that it was in conflict. It only means they rejected what it says. So from Genesis through really Acts somewhere, it's very completely Jewish. And in there, you have teachings that apply across the board to everybody. The nature of God's nature of man. Whereas the Quran is not a reliable text, and I laid out the reasons for that. And he said, that really answers my question. I never have heard any of that before. We have the same thing here with this question of reincarnation. Why should we trust the Bible versus someone's experience that they believe they had?
I think the Bible has shown itself to be an authoritative and divinely revealed book. Miracles did occur and authenticated the messengers, whether it was Moses or Elijah or other prophets. Miracles occurred to authenticate to them that, hey, you should listen to these people. And the same way with Jesus, of course, he did all kinds of miracles and then predicted his own resurrection and did it in 3 days. And then the apostles, Peter healed people. There was miracles that followed, signs and wonders that followed that authenticate. So I think that's a big thing. Then there's predictive prophecy. There's a lot of prophecies in the Bible that predict things that were going to occur. Take Daniel's 70-week prophecy from Daniel chapter 9, 25 and following, which lays out the timing of the coming of the Messiah. And it occurs exactly according to that chronology that Christ appeared in the first century at the end of the 69th week, just as Daniel said. So Psalms, Isaiah, a lot of Old Testament prophecies that prophesy details, specific details of the life of Jesus Christ, where he would be born, the nature of his death and crucifixion. All this stuff is a strong evidence and support of the fact that the Bible is divinely inspired.
Right.
I'm smiling because my our little girl just walked past there. Not my daughter, but my wife watches us. Cute little girl named Rhea, and she just made her big. What do you call it? First appearance. What do you call it when you're
Debut.
the debut? Yep,
Her debut.
she made her debut.
Well, good.
Very good.
Yeah. So all of that's true. There's strong evidence for the reliability of the scriptures, uh, and it is what tells us about what is true about life and what is false about life. And I just had a thought because you were mentioning that some of the early philosophers believed in reincarnation, and it makes me I don't know the answer to this question, but I know that pretty much all of the New Testament, with the exception of Philemon, was usually written to correct false teaching, false teachers, bad behavior, lay out proper teaching and good behavior. And Paul makes that statement, or the writer of Hebrews, it's appointed unto man once to die and then the judgment. I Is it possible he's responding to some who were kind of promoting reincarnation?
You know, Ronald Nash
Yeah.
is a Christian teacher and Bible
Apology.
teacher. He had a good book on, I think it's called The Greeks, and yeah, I forget. I have it on my shelf, but he kind of addressed the whole idea of some scholars believe that Paul was really responding to some Platonistic or Hellenistic ideas. And if you look at the book of Hebrews carefully, it does seem that Paul, or the writer of Hebrews, whoever that is, if it isn't Paul, is really trying to show that whereas this Platonistic idea or Gnostic idea that Jesus was just one of the emanations from God, he wasn't the supreme being. Well, look at what the writer says. He is fully God. He wasn't just an angel or something. Jesus is fully God, and he's a creator, and he's superior to the angels, and the new covenant is superior to the old covenant. So I think that makes a strong case that they were dealing perhaps with Hellenistic ideas and refuting them.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That just I'm glad you brought that up because it just popped in my head. We have a similar thing with the Gospel of John. I've mentioned this on the program before, because John is clearly laying out a life story of Jesus during the incarnation, and yet he's refuting two heresies that were afoot, that were in the church at the time: Ebionites, who denied the pre-existence of the Lord, and Docetus, who denied the incarnation as physical. He was a phantasm. And the first three verses argue against Ebionites, that he pre-existed the creation. He is the one who created it. He is God. He's with God. So all of that is there on the pre-existence and his nature of being God. And then in verse 14, it turns against the Docetus and says, by the way, the word became flesh. He actually, took on physical flesh. And you see that kind of carried all the way through the Gospel of John. So this may be a similar thing with the book of Hebrews. Is perhaps
Yeah,
they are fighting against that. Yeah.
that book it's called The Gospel in the Greeks by Nash.
Yeah.
I think Ronald
I
Nash.
remember that. Yeah.
But it's, you talk about pre-existence, and there are kind of Western advocates of reincarnation who claim that the early church fathers were, like Origen and others, were supporters of reincarnation. But really what it was is Origen believed, he was a Platonist, and he did believe in pre-existence. Platonistic learning is just a remembering of what you knew when you were in the pre-existence. And some of the church fathers did, like Origen, and Origen was condemned for it, for believing in pre-existence. But that's a long way away from reincarnation. And the fact is that the early church fathers did not advocate for reincarnation.
Right.
They
Right.
spoke against it, rather.
Yeah, exactly. Right. All right. So, in your neighborhood, choices of types of reincarnation, what seems to be the most popular today, and how do we interact with someone who believes it?
Well, I would return to where I started the show, saying if we look at the world and we look at people like Larry Norman, the gospel singer, had a line. He said, "Sometimes I think we've advanced, but then I look at where we are, and the technology has gotten better. But when we read the Old Testament and Proverbs, are people better than they were back then? After thousands of years, are we not still wrestling with the same demons, adultery, hatred, war, violence, gluttony, whatever it is?"
Yeah.
Um, and I think that to think that because I didn't get it in this one life, but I'm going to get it if I get more opportunities, that gives somebody a false sense of security. Like, well, if I don't get it together here, I'll just get it together in the next life. No, no, that's not what the Bible says. The Bible says this is your one opportunity. It is appointed to man once to die, then the judgment. You are going to face judgment. So I plead with people, do not buy the lie, the demonic deception that you're going to have other opportunities to earn your way to heaven. I plead with you to rather confess your sins to God and turn to Jesus Christ, who paid the price for your sins, so you can have and know that you have eternal life, not because of your efforts, but because of what Christ did for you.
Right. Right. Well, okay. So, for those who are interested, the EMNR conference at Gates 2025 is in Palatine, Illinois. Steve is one of the workshop leaders, and there'll be several others very gifted in their respective fields. Dr. H. Wayne House will be there as well. Um, so that'll be a good time. Is August 15 and 16. The information is online at emnr.org/conference. Check it out. Ron, would you care to walk us out of here?
Let's give credit to whom credit is due. Our resident cult leader profiler is Kneel Before Me. Our wardrobe manager is See How It Fits You. Culinary services are provided by Chef Hammond Cheese. Our tinfoil hat provisioner is Just In Case. Jehovah's Witnesses coverage comes from Armageddon and D. Opposer. Our Mormon Archives manager is Polygamus. Our Liberal Denominations Bureau Chief is Lucy Goosey. Our transgender issues comes from Ben Hur. Special correspondent for cults based on the Hindenburg disaster and flying turkeys. Ode to humanity. Ode to humanity. Okay, ode to humanity. Our fact-checking supervisor is Yolite Pulling. Technical assistance comes from Mercury Research. Our legal advisors are at the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Our grievance resolution director is Giovanna Pisamini. Director of Privacy Assurance is Larry Tipping. And original idea sourcing comes from Drury Blank. The Unknown Webcast is a production of Midwest Christian Outreach, Inc. in cooperation with Emergency Manicure Productions, both of whom are solely responsible for this content, although you will never be able to prove that in a court of law. And I didn't get finished before
Never,
the music ended.
never happened. No, but you got close.
I got close. This is the first time I didn't beat the music. Yeah. Okay.
All right, everybody.
Mark your calendars. August 5th. This is when it happened.